Great to see everyone. Really excited to be talking about having a session with some of the experts in talking about AI and analytics in the cloud. So first, I'd like to introduce our panelists. First is Swati Gharse. Please come on up. Swati, and give her a hand. Swati is the principal product manager on the Microsoft Azure machine learning platform. And previously, she's been PMing many other well-known Microsoft products, such as Bing and MSN. Mm-hmm. Next, we have Davey Wang, GM of Tencent Cloud International. Please come on up. Give him that. And Davey, in addition to being at Tencent today, previously was with two other cloud providers. He was with AWS, and prior to that, Alluxio, or Ali Cloud. So welcome. And also, we have Ben Lorica, our MC himself, and he's our chief data scientist of O'Reilly Media. Give him a hand.
Thank you.
OK, so this session is all about AI and analytics in the cloud. And first, I wanted to ask, Swati, what's one of the most interesting use cases you've seen recently for AI and analytics that was done in the cloud instead of perhaps on-prem?
Yeah. So one interesting thing we see about providing AI solutions in the cloud is the fact that we now make AI accessible to all kinds of customers, right? You're no longer constrained to only customers who have a lot of resources to have their on-prem solutions. It's no longer constrained to customers who have all the data science skills. It's become possible to make AI solutions available to all kinds of customers. And so, of course, you see all these large organizations that are using it to drive efficiency and so on. But one of the more interesting use cases I came across recently was a wildlife conservation agency that used AI in the cloud to prevent rhino poaching in South African parks. And what they did was they had a bunch of these motion-activated cameras that were installed at various locations through the parks. And anytime they detected any kind of motion, be it an animal moving or grass blowing in the wind or a human or a vehicle or whatever, the camera would take pictures. And as you can imagine, this would result in massive amounts of data, right, which would be humanly impossible to sit and process. But this is where they leveraged AI in the cloud to actually process all these images that were captured across all the various locations. And only images that detected any kind of abnormal human activity, like if they saw a human moving or a vehicle moving in an abnormal place, they would alert a team of human rescuers who would then immediately narrow in on that particular physical area and end up saving the rhino. So I saw a presentation from them, and I was pretty impressed by the kind of organizations that are just able to leverage AI, which was not thinkable a few years ago.
And that's very innovative. It'd be hard to put that into the region without using a
right. I mean, and these are organizations. It's like a wildlife conservation agency, probably a nonprofit, which doesn't have a whole lot of resources. Yeah. And it's pretty amazing that everybody can now leverage AI.
Okay, great. Davey, how about you? What have you seen that's been especially creative or innovative that you'd like to share?
Yeah, right. Actually, Tencent is really to consumer companies, and we have tons of billions of customers. And we do leverage AI and machine learning technologies to provide better services to them. Just to give you several scenarios which currently we are doing now, and I think it's quite successful. One is about healthcare, and actually, they are using the AI machine learnings to recognize all the CTs, all the scanned images to recognize cancers or some other, diseases, and by machine, not by human, one by one. So this proves that they can increase accuracies and also benefits the patient. On the other side, currently our business unit is called Cloud and Smart Industry, which means we leverage cloud AI to equip our industry, so make them smart. So one of the typical one is called Smart Retail. Last month I just have a private dinner with all the executive for the luxury brand, and then they feel that in China, because of AI, because of machine learning, the customers there, especially in store, get a very good experience a very smooth experience. It's say, from the first step into the physical store to find something they're interesting, to get some special customized offers, to payment, to get things shipped. So it's very smooth with only in one WeChat system, and everything got, the customers got very satisfied. So that's why they believe that they can do the same thing in the US, also with equipped with all this kind of big data and machine learning technology.
And what were some of the data challenges associated with that, that use case?
Yeah, the challenge is still about a lot of companies and even the government concerned about the security, compliance, and privacy. That definitely we hire a lot of security expertise and also invite the professional associations to do the certifications and everything. So make sure that all the data sitting in the cloud storage will be safe and compliant.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Ben? What do you think? You've seen a whole, you go to conferences, you lead conferences. You must hear a lot of very interesting use cases. And why cloud for those use cases? What would you say?
Yeah, I think so. The way I'd answer this, so AI, in many ways, right now, the manifestations are around basically 3 data types, right? So computer vision, so images and video, speech, and natural language, and I guess to some extent structured data, which you can. So when it comes to structured data, it's not clear there that deep learning is head and shoulders above, but in the other data types, it seems like deep learning is the right way to do things. So in computer vision, a lot of examples. So I'm echoing what Swati said. So it's a lot about accelerating your ability to try something and being able to train across massive data sets. So the interesting thing is in natural language, the last 12 months, there's been a lot of progress around these humongous pre-trained models, right? So we're talking models that have billions of parameters. But it turns out that the right strategy is to take one of these models and fine-tune it for one of your domains and applications, because they're just massive. I mean, it'll cost you like $500,000 to train these models from scratch in the cloud. So how do you fine-tune one of these models for your domain? Well, you'll probably need some tooling around that, right? So not a lot of enterprises will probably have the right people or the right setup to do this fine-tuning. And so I think that's where the opportunity is in taking some of these pre-existing architectures, which is the same pattern we see in computer vision, and fine-tuning it for your domain. So text, I think, is the next big area where this is going to happen.
And these are all very good use cases for the cloud. And so you'd say that every organization will start to find this coming at them, right?
Yeah, so I think that if you look at typical enterprise, so what data do they have? It's mostly structured, semi-structured, and text. So in many ways, computer vision and speech are somewhat advanced topics, I would say, for enterprises. They're not necessary. Most regular companies don't necessarily collect that data, let alone unlock that type of data. But text, I think, is a common data type.
Okay, great. So let's go to another question. The cloud has been around for over a decade. And it seems to me that AI and analytics was slower to move to the cloud. What has surprised you about the adoption of leveraging cloud for AI and analytics? Swati?
So I see, when I look at challenges with adopting the cloud for AI and analytics, it mainly falls into 2 buckets of categories of customers who face problems. Depending on their maturity level, if they are beginning to use this, they have different concerns, like they might not have the right kind of data, they might not have the right kind of skill set to leverage AI in the cloud. With more mature customers, it's mostly about trying to scale out their AI solutions. Those have been challenges in adopting cloud solutions for them.
Okay. Great. Davey, and what have you seen in this regard?
Yeah, actually, I've been working for cloud for just like almost a decade. And actually, I do have a lot of feedback from customers. For the beginners, their concern is like, how can I store my data into cloud so I can do it like training or maybe estimations, forecast. So actually, for them, the biggest hurdle is to get familiar with cloud. That's a foundation for using cloud, is even before AI. But for some experienced customers, so their challenge will be look like how to use cloud efficiently. Like, we have a peak and valley seasons, how to make it scalable, how to using or leverage a lot of cloud native services, because currently we do have a lot of framework like Tencent Flow, MXNet, a lot of things, they are all management service on Tencent Cloud already. You don't need to do from the ground, you don't need to do from scratch. Even Alluxio, currently we are also doing this kind of integration to make it a management service for you. So you just leverage the service, you don't need to worry about anything underneath. So how to make a better use of this kind of managed service is another challenge for the experienced users. So as cloud, the many benefit for cloud is pay as you go, make every penny worth. So that's something I can see from the experienced customers, especially they have a lot of data already.
And then what have you seen there in terms of leveraging cloud for analytics and AI?
I guess I'll take a step back and just talk about AI in general. I mean, regardless of whether it's cloud or on-prem. So we did a survey earlier this year, and we found that at least for the people who are barely getting started with machine learning and AI, the common bottleneck they cited was basically just identifying use cases and having a portfolio of use cases, right? So that you can consistently push ahead with your adoption strategy. And also convincing the rest of your organization that this set of technologies is the right investment given all the competing things you have to weigh. For the more advanced companies, as they've cited, it comes down to two things. Lack of data, because everything begins with data, right? So, and also lack of skilled people. So.
And would you say that in terms of this concept of multi-cloud, AWS is not on this panel, so we can talk about multi-cloud. What's your view on the future of multi-cloud? Is it worth the trouble to do multi-cloud, especially in the realm of data having quite a bit of gravity, given the egress costs associated with these things?
So before they answer, I'll just cite statistics from our survey. So we asked people, do you have part of your data or machine learning infrastructure in the cloud? So we had like several thousand respondents. I think 85% said they were already moving some of their infrastructure to the cloud. And I think over half of those respondents said they are on multiple clouds.
Is it more just a primary cloud where all of your stuff is, and just have a little bit of a few instances or silos in another cloud for no lock-in purposes, or what do you think? Swati, do you have a view on that?
So I'm looking at it only from the Azure standpoint, actually, and we do know that some of our customers use multi-cloud. There are some that are dedicated to one provider for whatever reason. We see a mix of all of these different scenarios.
For AI and analytics, would you say it's better to choose one cloud to put all that in?
As long as that cloud is Azure.
Of course. And if it's not Azure or Tencent?
Yeah, Tencent is another good option. Actually, from my perspective, it really depends on the scenario and depends on the stage of the company. So I could see that from a lot of companies, when they at their initial stage, startup stage, they could stick to one cloud because of the skills, because of the resources. But I could see a lot of enterprise, when they grow bigger and bigger, they start considering multi-cloud strategy, even on AI and machine learning project, because of several things. And first, they were considering the price. They can have a better choice for the better price performance. The other is talking about the technical availability. Say, for example, if they choose the framework which is cloud neutral, they can easily switch between clouds. And if something happened, we always hear a lot of accident on cloud, right? If there's some mission critical project, and then they can switch to other cloud very easily. Like DR or high availability purpose, they have to choose multi-cloud strategy.
Yeah, and to some extent, I think people are coalescing around some of these open source frameworks, right? So it becomes kind of a cost calculation at that point.
Yes.
It's more open.
Yeah, because basically the tooling is becoming standardized somewhat. Actually, surprisingly, we found people are on more than 2 clouds even. Like so, yeah. So
that's hard.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, Davey, that it was the larger companies that want hybrid or multi-cloud. Do you see in the future that smaller companies will have a multi-cloud strategy also?
From my perspective, just like I mentioned, it's really hard because they don't have enough resources and also the human resources as well. So but from the beginning, they could say that I'm just using the cloud mutual framework or services to be instead of locking to one cloud vendor. That would be smart. Like currently, I could see that a lot of customers using Kubernetes. You can use any Kubernetes. You can use Kubernetes on any cloud, right? So instead of using some of like DynamoDB, we'll be locked into AWS, right? Using Cosmos DB, we'll be locked into Azure, right? So that's my suggestion.
Okay. So we're here at the Data Orchestration Summit, and maybe we can start with you, Swati. What's your view of how orchestration is perhaps different as it relates to doing AI in the cloud? And what does that mean to you when you hear the term orchestration?
So I think I'll respond by just saying how are people using data differently in the cloud. In general, what we see is the size of data that people can deal with in the cloud is way bigger than it was ever possible when they were on on-prem solutions, right? Yeah. So you're talking about like multiple factors of magnitude, larger amounts of data. And also when you're going to the cloud, the scale of compute enables you to do things that you wouldn't have been able to do before. Like elastic compute, for example, lets you scale your solutions only on an as-needed basis. And so the kind of problems you can tackle are way different when you're using the cloud, leveraging AI in the cloud for your solutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great answer. Yeah. So maybe we can continue that in terms of if you see that many people have different options for cloud now, right? There's AWS, there's Azure, Google, Tencent, more. How do you think that this will be differentiated, or is it really a race down to zero, and folks ought to just use whatever's cheapest? Davey, what would you say to that?
Yeah, actually, because I've been working for several cloud companies, to be honest, my suggestion would be find the suitable one for you. You cannot say this one is better, this one is not as better as others. It really depends on your scenario. I believe that you can figure out every cloud has its unique value. Like, for example, AWS, we all know that the initial of AWS is based on their usage, especially for e-commerce. And for Tencent, we have QQ, we have WeChat. WeChat is a famous product with 1 billion monthly active users. So that's why Tencent wants to build its ability to process such a huge data set as a service to serve our customers. So you see, for example, if you really want to leverage this kind of capability, you can choose Tencent Cloud. But if you want to really just build an e-commerce website, maybe AWS is a better choice. So it really depends. So for the data orchestration, I have something to say that everybody here is talking about big data, right? So I've been in IT field for around 20 years, and actually the BI is a very old concept. So at that moment, because storage compute is very expensive, so people selectively store the data, so-called big data. But I think that's not right. You maybe because you select data, then you drive into the wrong conclusion. But now, so it's really good that we have cheap storage, we have cloud, we collect as much as possible data, then you can have a better analysis tool, big data tool, just like Alluxio, and then you can have the right conclusion based on all the fact.
Okay, great. I want to touch upon what you said, that every cloud is a little bit specific. And Microsoft Azure has chat applications too. So what would you say to that, Swati?
Yeah, I would agree with part of what he said about going to the right solution provider depending on your problem. But I would also say that keep in mind that your problem space might change over time. So be open to the fact that as your problem morphs, you might have different needs and you might want to be open to look at other capabilities. Cost is a big factor in all of this, but it's also a bunch of capabilities. And again, it really depends on the problem you're trying to solve at the point.
Say an AI problem.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Ben, what's your thought? You've been listening to the talks and announcing the speakers. What's your view of data orchestration? Is this a new take on an old topic, or is it something different than that?
I mean, I think based on the response here, right, of the attendance you have here, it seems like it's a needed part of the stack, given the fact that people are really dealing with so many disparate storage systems. Now, the question, and I'll throw this back to you, is I think most of the sessions we've had this morning revolved around analytics and interactive SQL and things like that. So the question moving forward is there's some of the speakers talked about the initial test cases around machine learning. Yeah. So the question moving forward is, will data orchestration be something that plays a role in machine learning and AI moving forward? It seems like now that you guys support structured data, so I think there might be more opportunities there, right? So given that a lot of enterprises start with structured data when it comes to machine learning.
Yeah, I'd definitely agree with that. So what would you advise someone who's just starting out trying to leverage AI in the cloud or analytics in the cloud? How would you go about choosing which one and starting? So what would you say, Swati, would you like to start?
Yeah, so for folks who are just starting out, I would say basically get started with this journey, first of all. Look at the cloud, look at leveraging AI in the cloud because of the scale of data it lets you address, right? And also because of the fact that having this kind of cloud compute allows you to build solutions that would otherwise not be possible with your on-prem solutions. The other thing that I've learned is, especially for beginner customers, they have varying skill sets when it comes to data science. And I would advise people saying, don't be afraid that you don't have the right data science skills. A lot of cloud providers today are offering AI solutions which require very little skill set. Like they're really simple solutions that make it really easy for you to get started and infuse AI into your offerings. And I would highly encourage them to start looking at some of these solutions.
Microsoft certainly has a lot of...
Microsoft certainly has made it a primary focus to make AI in the cloud really simple to use. Yes. Like we want to focus on simplicity and make it accessible to everybody, because that's the only way you're going to truly democratize AI, right?
Yeah. You drive a lot of low-code types of approaches, which are
we have solutions right from like no-code drag-and-drop tools to automated machine learning solutions to, you could also have like code-first experiences, where you're firing up Jupyter notebooks and writing your own code to build your own AI solutions. But given that variety of skill sets, it's possible to look out there and find the right solution for you. And it's really become a lot simpler today than it was a few years ago.
Yes, so it's much more simpler. You can now experiment with these things. Mm-hmm. Davey, what's your advice for starting out with doing an analytics project or AI?
Right. So actually, my suggestion would be still look at the cloud, even you're the beginner. So just for example, Tencent Cloud has several tiers of AI framework, from the very fundamental, like we have GPU services, which means you can build everything you want. And based on that, we have the so-called PaaS, which means like Tencent Flow as a service, MXNet as a service, will support pretty much every framework. And based on that, we have SaaS, which means we have a lot of framework can help you do this kind of image recognition, voice recognition, something like the SaaS mode. So if you're a very beginner, you can just using the top layer to try to input some pictures, like to learn, optimize our models and do predictions. And after you have the feeling of that, you can go deeper, figure out what's the reason behind, what's the mechanism, how this framework figure out how they can do training, how they can do predictions. And then after that, you can even customize those frameworks. So that's step by step. And also Tencent Cloud can provide every tier of AI framework to help you to learn even from zero to the expert. And we do prepare a lot of data to help you. Say, for example, there's a sample data set. You can, from the sample data set, you can train something, you can predict something. So just like make sure you can learn smoothly. And also in the meanwhile, we also know Tencent also has the #1 social advertisement platform in China. So we can help you to learn how to tag people, right, based on something, right, based on all the information, public information. So you can also learn from that. It's also a framework. We have already helped one of our customers to help them to classify, to categorize, to tag the people.
So you have many different offerings from do-it-yourself all the way to a very simple self-service.
Right, like drag and play and a simple commands, and that's a UI.
So you mentioned GPUs, and what's your take on, will companies buy a lot of GPUs for their data centers, or do you think it'll mostly be in the cloud as these models are very extreme? Swati, I see you smiling. What's your take? Because I'm sure Azure invests a ton in building these kinds of bespoke chips.
So as organizations start needing to leverage deep learning, they're going to realize the need for GPU infrastructure. And if you look at the cost per machine of GPUs, it's not going to be scalable for everybody to build this infrastructure in-house. We think that going forward, as you start building your deep learning workloads, you will want to leverage GPUs in the cloud where you can scale on demand and pay as you go. So you're not really investing, you're not investing on infrastructure that's not used. But when you need to, you're scaling to a much larger scale than was ever possible before. I would highly recommend GPUs in the cloud.
Then I saw you nodding your head.
No, I'm not nodding. I'm disagreeing. So there's a couple of alumni of AmpLab, Amit Talwalkar and Evan Sparks, who started a company called Determined.ai. So I encourage you guys to go visit their blog. Amit and Evan have spent a lot of time studying GPUs and GPU utilization, particularly in light of as you grow your team of deep learning engineers, and they found that it's actually, for the most part, more economical to bring it in-house. But I'm not, I don't have the details off the top of my head, but they've spent a lot of time actually systematically studying this problem. So Determined.ai.
Okay, great. So we're running out of time, so I'll just ask one more question that's more of a crystal ball one. So how do you think the usage of AI and analytics will change? What will it look like in 3 to 5 years from now? Davey, would like to start?
Well, so from my personal perspective, I could see that a lot of industry can get benefit and leverage AI service to change this industry. So my personal view is that in the next 3 to 5 years, all the AI machine learning framework will be more vertical, which means different area, different industry, and more deeper onto this area to resolve the real issues and create the real futures, fundamentally change the industry. That's something I can see. Currently, a lot of framework are so general, they can serve for any industry.
Okay. Swati, would you like to comment?
Yeah, so we're already starting to see a lot of industries transforming their solutions, using AI. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, we're only going to see this trend grow. The two main things that I think we're going to see, and AI is going to be integrated into most aspects of our life, a few years from now, right? But I think the two main value props that any AI-infused solution is going to bring us is it's going to enable us to work more efficiently. It's going to be driving new efficiencies that we haven't seen before. Like you could use systems to help humans decide where to focus their energies. And the other area, I think, is hyper-personalization, where we'll enable highly individualized solutions. So take education, for example. You can imagine a scenario where you have a curriculum that's actually catered to individual students' needs and abilities, things that were not thinkable, in the past. So I think these are the kind of advances we're going to be seeing as time goes by.
Things that are not thinkable. That's exciting, an exciting future. Ben?
So I think I'll answer by speculating about how developments in AI itself, right? So the few things I'm interested in is automation. So right now, when people talk about AutoML, for the most part, they use it to describe the model building process. But it turns out there's automation at every stage of the pipeline, right? So from labeling data, from data cleaning and repair, and across the machine learning pipeline. Secondly, specialized hardware. I think one of the main bottlenecks right now is that we're still in a highly empirical era for deep learning, so there's a lot of trial and error. But if each experiment lasts 2 weeks or 2 months, then there's not a lot of things you can try. So with specialized hardware, we're starting to see, like Cerebrus, that promise to accelerate training time. Then I think there will be more ideas, more architectures that can be tried out. And then finally, the last few months, I've been paying attention to reinforcement learning. Reinforcement learning has traditionally been used or been written about in the context of playing games like AlphaGo and things like this. But there's now seems to be an emerging set of use cases for enterprise. So in fact, the number of job postings now for reinforcement learning is about 10% of the number of job postings for deep learning. So there's companies definitely who are trying to play around with it.
Great. Well, this is definitely a very bright future, and really want to thank the panel here for speaking about this. Hope this was an informative session, and thanks again. Let's give them a round of applause.